So, I'm going to pass it over now. Melissa over here, Melissa Burns, just recently moved into the area, and I understand she has a lot of experience flying upside down and doing things that I wouldn't do in my little plane. But anyway, I'm going to pass it over to you. I apologize. I don't have all your background. I should have done a bit more of a bio.
You log on my website and read the bio off, or I can just introduce myself, which is easier.
Okay, hang on. I'm going to pass the mic over to you so that because we're going to record this.
Oh, great. I should have practiced.
Sorry.
There we go. Awesome.
Yeah, it's fine.
Can you hear me okay? Here, I can. Good thing I wore my rain jacket so there's something to hook it to. And yeah, hi, I'm Melissa. Nice to meet you guys. I'll play a quick little intro video here, and then I'll give you some of my background. And I didn't really prepare anything super formal. I'm not going to stand up here and give you a keynote, but I'll talk through some of. I'd say the main question I get is how does someone end up flying air shows for a living, right? So I'll give you some of my story and background there, and then if you guys have questions or want to hear any sort of specific stories, then we can dive into that too. So, quick little intro. See if the volume works. If not, I can talk over it, my own voiceover.
My passion in life is to fly. I grew up dredging for gold, scuba diving, and climbing with my family. And I learned to fly with my grandma, Mary Lou Wade, who was a flight instructor and raced in the all-women's powder puff air race derbies, and my grandfather, Leo Jansen's retired Air Force test pilot. I love aerobatics, and as a result, I have made my career from it through world competition and airshow displays. I focus on bringing a wide range of aerobatic and skydiving displays to airshow audiences worldwide. However, airplanes are not all that I fly. I'm also an avid skydiver and base jumper. Free flying with my friends and taking part in formation world records has kept me passionate over the years, as well as competing in wingsuit base racing. Through these adventures, I strive to be a positive role model, an inspiration to women across the world, showing them that no dream is too big.
The former Reno Air Races.
Possible.
Cool, so I won't make you sit and watch YouTube videos for the whole time, but I find a 2-minute video kind of helps to lay the groundwork of my background. And I don't wingsuit base jump anymore. I have a 4- and 6-year-old, so I decided I have to pick one of my high-risk activities that I get to keep up, so I chose airshow flying. So yeah, as that said, it's an EAA chapter. So when I was in high school, my grandpa was an Air Force test pilot. My grandma, as I said there, she did some of the old powder puff air racing. She was a flight instructor, 20-some grandkids, lived at one of the few air parks in Western Pennsylvania. So going to grandma's house was going to the airport. We'd go, and every once in a while, you'd be the lucky kid that she said, hey, you want to go fly? And she had a Cessna 150 Aerobat. She'd take us up, and just like going to the lake house, she'd do the 1 for the money, 2 for the show, 3 to get ready, and 4 to go. And instead of jumping into the lake, she'd pull up and do a loop or do a barrel roll. Now, I thought this was normal. I thought everyone's grandma flies aerobatics, and, right? And then gives you a cookie afterwards, because that's what my grandma did. She married my grandfather, Leo Jansen's, who I'm so thankful for. He was an Air Force test pilot. He retired. He then went on to continue doing test flying for the FAA. He did it all the way into his mid-70s, and just was an incredible guy. But Leo did my private pilot's license with me when I was a senior in high school, and then for my first big cross country, we flew to Oshkosh, and completely ruined me. Now I never thought I would go the traditional track. I fly for Alaska Airlines now, so here we are. That's what brought me to Washington. But I spent 20 years of my career just chasing my passion for aviation. I had the incredible opportunity to fly for the U.S. Aerobatic team 4 times over the years. The best I did, I got 3rd in the world, and I've placed 2nd in several flights. This is with the male and female categories separated. In the last couple years, they've actually merged, and now we have an overall World Championships. But I always placed in the top 5 and was a member of our combined team, so I was always proud of that. So I wasn't on the team just because I was a girl. And yeah, so I've got a stack of world medals from that. I competed in the wingsuit racing. I won the Women's World Championships of Wingsuit B.A.S.E racing in Norway at Extreme Sports Week. So that's the one world title I got to hold. Do you know how many of us were competing? 2. But hey, I got that one. It was actually a qualifier to go and do those races in China that I showed up. That was those beautiful floating mountains with that winding road. It's Zhangjiajie, China, right in the middle of the country. Just such an incredible experience to go and do that. And I find, I'm sure you guys feel this way too, with aviation, with the base jumping, with the skydiving, with all of these sky sports, what I love so much about it are the places it takes us and the people it connects us to. So my airshow flying, I have flown on every continent except Antarctica. I've held licenses in 8 different countries because I found that flying local aircraft is much easier than shipping my airplane and taking the wings off and sending it all over the world, though I've done that as well. Some of the fun parts of being an airshow pilot is just the getting there. Going up and flying, I mean, you guys can turn around and watch me fly at Abbotsford right in your backyard here in August, doing the actual display. That's 10 minutes of a week of getting there, right? And all of the preparation that goes into it. My airshow partner is Skip Stewart. We have a pyro team that we work with. We have a jet truck that we race with. And Skip and I think we make a good team because when someone calls us up and says, hey, can you be in Panama next week? We're like, yeah, sure. One of our more unique experiences was our first time going into Central America with our little airshow planes, right? You're basically a professional VFR cross-country pilot in a really bad cross-country airplane with a high compression engine on the front that's just waiting to blow. So we like to fly them over jungles and open water. Because why not? We now, when we go to Central America, we hop from Key West down to the islands or down to Cozumel and then into places like Guatemala and El Salvador from there. If you've never done it, Guatemala City and Ilopango in Guatemala and in El Salvador, 2 of the oldest aero clubs in the world, and put on 2 of the most long ongoing air shows that exist. Really fun events. These aero clubs are super active. Really fun excuse for a reason to go down. Alaska Airlines flies to both. Just putting that out there. So now it's something that we do every year. We love to go down and do these shows. But the very first time, we didn't want to hop over the water, so we flew ourselves down to Brownsville, Texas, met up. This was right when they had started doing E.A.P.E.S.E, that online manifest. And so the first thing we did was screw that up. They tried to charge us each $10,000 on the way back in. That was fun. We went in the bathroom, refiled it, and then it magically popped up on their computer, and that was fine. But getting through Mexico, getting down that Gulf Coast, I just remember thinking, we checked the weather, it was fine at our destinations, we take off, and of course, as soon as we cross the border, that coast just gets so nasty. You're just down low, watching birds taking off on the beach in front of you, and all I could think is, we cannot land here because we're never gonna get our airplanes back. Like, we're right on the border, following the coast down. We finally make it, probably went through some prohibited airspace. We made all the mistakes that you can make. Take 2 airline pilots, put them in 2 VFR airplanes and see how badly they can screw it up. And we end up landing at this airport in the middle of nowhere, Mexico, and of course get approached by guys with their big guns and all their dogs. We're like, what are we gonna do? And so we pull out a couple autograph cards and hand them out. The guns go away, the dogs go away. And then a couple guys with their helicopters walk over, like, hey, you wanna ride into town? Turned into one of the most fun nights, and just I don't know, like that's one story I like to tell because I feel like it covers so many of the experiences that we have. We ended up getting down to getting down to our destination, and it was El Salvador, and I remember coming up over and just this cloud layer. We're like, oh man, we gotta find a spot down through. So we got a great avionics sponsor after this, but we found a spot that we could circle down, get under the cloud layer, and I will never forget that visual. Man, aviation's cool. We pop out and all we see are volcanoes all around us. I mean, we knew the spot we were over was fine to descend into, but then to see that visual of that green and those volcanoes, it was so beautiful. It became one of our favorite spots to go. And then, you hop on, you get around the corner where they can finally talk to you, and they bring you in, and you're basically being greeted by the president of the country. And here we've just started relationships with friends whose kids are babies that we've now watched grow over the years. There's a point to this. So now, over the years, going back to these shows, the last time I went there was not this past winter, but the winter before. And I had a girl come up to me with her mom, and she said, I met you whenever I was however old, just about waist height probably. And she brought me a picture that she took with me every year since. And she walked up and she had her uniform on with her stripes. And she had just gotten her first job flying. And I said, that right there is the reason that we do this. Sometimes it feels like a selfish endeavor, going and flying upside down and traveling the world and just having so much fun. But over time, it's a long game, and we see those little impacts that we're having. And to me, that just was one story, hopefully of many, that gave a lot of meaning to the last 20 years of flying this little air show plane around. So anyway, I graduated high school the year of 9/11. So, not a great time to get involved in aviation. Sean Tucker pulled me into a mentorship program that he was doing. His son and I are the same age. That's what got me into the air show flying side of things. I was also competing in aerobatics. We always say it's great to have a base in competition before getting involved in the air show side of things. And somehow I started making money before I started losing it on the air show side of thing, and it just allowed me to pursue this passion. Along the way, I've also worked as a glacier pilot up until Kootenai, Alaska. That's where my husband is from. So I did glacier flying up there for about 5 years, flying the climbers in and out in the single engine otters on wheel skis. Really fun flying, hard work, but fun flying. And my husband got into the fire aviation side of things. As the kids started to get older, we thought, we probably should get a grown-up job. And flight benefits don't suck. So that's when I took the job at Alaska Airlines, and my husband flies for NetJets. And we settled here in Bellingham in November. Brett absolutely saved me with the hangar for my Edge 540, so I've got that here now. It mostly lives on the road. I take it to Florida for the winter, for maintenance, training, etc. But yeah, if you see someone out flying around in your backyards, I'm working on getting an aerobatic box at the airport so I can fly there. But if I'm up there blowing smoke or making noise, that's me. If you want to complain, I'll give you my cell phone number. But but yeah, we're really excited to be a part of this aviation community, and we probably should get a membership. We'll join your chapter and drag the kids up here sometime. But yeah, I thought I'd just do a broad introduction, give you a story, and then open it up to questions and see if there's anything that you guys want to ask me.
Who does your maintenance?
That's a great question. Normally, so Warren Schiller's in Florida is who does all of my primary maintenance on the Edge. So he works on most of the aerobatic planes down there. He used to work with the company that imported the extras to Florida. So yeah, he knows those planes really well. I'm probably going to be bugging Brett mostly whenever I'm home now.
You're gonna have to expand there, Brett.
I know, right? I don't know. They're
a little time in the tail of an Edge 540, and it's an acquired taste.
It's tight, right? Well, and now he's talking about this expansion. I'm like, oh shoot, are they going to build over where I just applied for my aerobatic box? So I might be bugging you about your backyard some more. And if anyone ever wants to hold a poll for an inverted ribbon cut, you know how to go to my website, sportscow.com. All my contact information is on there. If you're coming up to Abbotsford, we're talking about making events. I think an air show at Bellingham would be pretty awesome to bring.
You did talk about it already.
Yeah.
Kevin's been talking about it, so he's been pushing some of us to
Yes.
We used to run air shows and you say, oh, look.
Yes. Right. I think it'd be, I mean, we've got I'm a part of the Northwest Council of Air Shows as well, so we usually meet up in Canada, but there's such a good plethora of performers and static displays. Like, we could put on quite a show here.
Who'd you fly for until Keaton?
I flew for Talkeetna Air Taxi for Paul.
Okay.
Roderick, yeah.
You know the people at K2?
Yeah.
You know Kimball?
Kimmel.
Kimball.
She's
He was one of the founders.
Long gone.
Yeah.
My husband would, because he grew up there. He's worked with everybody in the area. He was from, okay. Yeah, I should have dragged Trent along, but we had a 6-year-old sleepover last night, so he's watching the kids.
How many air shows a year do you do?
So this year, because I had to get the engine overhauled, I am only doing 6. I just did Hillsborough, we've got Abbotsford, I've got Hill Air Force Base at the end of this month, back up to Elmendorf in Alaska, which is where I met my husband at, and down to Acapulco in Mexico. Typically though, I do about 12, which is maybe a little more than I need to be doing. Whoops. But with doing them more domestically, it's been easier. Alaska Airlines supports me with positive space travel, which has been amazing, and they don't say, no, you can't go do that. But previously, before kids, I would still only do about 12 to 15 shows, but it was a lot more international. So I'd do a season in Europe, I'd go to Australia, I still do the Central America shows, but I keep it mostly to the North America continent now.
How about meshing your Alaska Airlines pilot schedule with the air shows?
I've found they help me out with drops every now and again. Mostly I can give trips away and trade around though. Yeah, if it was up to me, I'd just drop like half my schedule anyway, but I guess I still have to pay for that maintenance.
I saw that you made a trip from Florida to, I can't say.
Valdez?
Yes.
Yes.
But the fact of what is the range of the aircraft? I don't know if you've got additional tankage or something like that.
I do. So the Edge does pretty well. It has the main acro tank is 19 gallons, which is a lot for an airshow plane. That's helpful for me when I do remote shows. Oftentimes, right, you're taking off and have to go fly over the water somewhere. But the wings hold 23 gallons a side. So I've got about 63 gallons total. And if I can get up to altitude, I can back it off and get about 4 hours out of it. I typically will fly the wings off, so I'll get about 3 hours and then save the acro tank for reserve. But if that runs out, I can flip upside down. I've got about 3 more gallons in the header tank.
Tell us about that landing.
Yeah. I mean, it's been done. Might want to pop the canopy off first. Actually, quick safety story. This is kind of a fun one. And it's fun for me to tell. It's got it, but of course, it's got a sad side to it too, but I think it's a good takeaway. Travis Air Force Base, Northern California. I was flying a show there. Eddie Andrini, it's the show he passed away at. Great guy, but he would do an inverted ribbon cut in his Stearman. He was so skilled, but he had a canopy on it because we lived out of Half Moon Bay, training there, it's cold. Like Half Moon Bay is kind of chilly. So we're at this show, and we have a safety first culture in the air show world, especially through the International Council of Air Shows. We really push this safety culture because, of course, there can be a lot of machoism and things going on in this industry, but it is one that kills. So I remember setting up my ribbon cut there, and it's like flying over open water. There's so much tarmac, and there's not a lot of definition. So when you come down, you get that effect where you can't quite tell how high you are. And with the ribbons, we line the ribbon up with the horizon beyond. And then any other peripheral visuals, grass, even taxiway lines can be helpful. The only spot that was good to set these ribbons up, it didn't have much reference. I have a lot of space between my tail and the ground when I do a ribbon cut. I've got a good 15 feet. Eddie only had a few feet. And I remember thinking, I should, just like a fleeting thought, I should say something to Eddie about that spot because we're setting our poles up in the same place. But then the next thought came in, he's been doing ribbon cuts since before I was born. Like, what am I gonna say to him? But in hindsight, I wish I had said something just to give us that extra thought of safety, because then my friend Matt, he flies a Twin Beach. and he does air shows in that. Nothing like a high performance air show plane. He doesn't do inverted ribbon cuts, very different types of displays. Matt and I both started flying shows in 05, similar experience, but he goes, hey Melissa, he comes from an air show family. Hey Melissa, you know, I remember his dad was an air show pilot. You guys probably saw him, Bobby Yonkin. You probably saw him fly. And he goes, my dad always used to watch all those high performance planes doing those ribbon cuts, and he'd say, I just wish they'd add on a little extra speed. Because you add on a little extra speed, now when you make corrections, the tail's not deflecting as much. If your engine quits or you have an issue, you've got that extra airspeed to roll up and land, or to problem solve. And I thought, you know, that's a really good point. I'm gonna throw an extra 15 nuts on my inverted ribbon cut, because the audience doesn't know the difference, and it gives me that much of a safety margin. I go out, I do my ribbon cut, and all of a sudden I lose oil pressure. And I had that extra speed, so I was able to just casually push, climb, roll upright. I had plenty of runway to land if I needed it. Oil pressure came back up. I had thrown a mag drive bearing. It got stuck in my three-way valve. You're all pilots, so we can talk this stuff. And when I was inverted, it was cutting off the oil pressure. When I rolled upright, it came back, so I was able to come around, land, and troubleshoot. Well, Eddie then went out and did his flight, and I was, unfortunately, we were all sitting right there, and he landed upside down. Once your tail touches, you can't climb back out. And this has happened before. People have landed upside down out of ribbon cuts, but he got stuck because of the canopy, and there was a fire, and that's how we lost him. So again, it's got a very tragic side to this story, but a very real story. And for me, all of my decision making has been impacted by that day. And when I see a friend, whether we're out bush flying, doing whatever it is we're doing, I always speak up now, because Matt spoke up and he might have saved my life that day. And I always think, in hindsight, if I had spoke up, maybe Eddie would still be here today too. So, yeah.
I noticed in the video, you, before a program, you were putting on a helmet.
Yes.
And I've also flown for TAT.
Oh, nice.
And so helmets are starting to be more worn by off-airport work, and I know you get ag work, but you're the first I've seen at an air show. And so I was curious about that, and I also noticed as you were pulling it on, it seemed very tight, not at all like a motorcycle helmet or something you could, with any comfort. So what is the deal with the helmet, and is anybody else doing acro going to helmet?
Really good question. I'd say about half of us wear helmets in the high performance side of things. I wear an HU55, so they're made for helicopter pilots. They're lightweight, so they don't hurt your neck, but they also, you can get them custom molded to your head. So mine, I've had that helmet since 2005. I have had years I've flown without it, just because my neck, it's a lot of whiplash, and we all kind of have neck issues. Our chiropractors love us. We're keeping them all in business. But I went back to the helmet, and it's not that it's always going to save your life, but even if you're going to have to jump out of the plane, the chances of the canopy hitting your head or catching the tail, whatever it may be, I just think it gives us that extra level of protection that's worth it. So we are, and I'm seeing helmet companies starting to sponsor a lot of airshow pilots as well. I wish more people backcountry were wearing them. Did anyone here know Arissa?
Yes.
Yeah, so Arissa's a good example. When she had her accident, of if she had had a helmet on, it could have saved her. And I'm not one to talk, because I don't fly my bush plane with a helmet, but I certainly think about it. And I think shoulder harnesses and helmets with any backcountry flying it's something we should all be working towards. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Good question.
Then I think it was Guatemala, I'm not sure, flying off a grass strip, and
yes,
your partner was also there. It looked like, how would you want to say it, their rules as far as clearance from the crowd and all that were slightly less.
Slightly less. Yeah, clearance from the crowd is about 2 feet. So that show, whenever we go and perform, there's a balance, right? Because we have our rules that we fly under with our waivers, but when we go and fly, when I go to fly in Europe, no one's flying below 100 meters. It becomes more conservative. What we really adhere to mainly is our energy towards the crowd. And I find like whenever we're flying somewhere like Guatemala where the crowd is right on the runway, this is a private show that we do for their Aero Club. We go out and we do our performance 500 feet from the crowd over the trees, and we do all of our high performance aerobatics there, and then we come and do our passes on the runway, which it's still legal, it's still within the aerobatic box, but those we are absolutely getting closer to the audience. So we'll usually come in for those shows. You're not going to get invited back if you don't perform for the crowd. So we'll do, you know, our passes so they get the wow factor, and but then we go out and we stick to the limitations that we would stick to flying a show in the States. Yeah. Otherwise, I mean, we're setting the example, and pilots that are coming up and not working through waivers, we've seen it a lot, where then they go and they do things that they shouldn't be doing yet. And, crashes into audiences are never a good thing for the industry. So we try to set a good example and encourage them to follow the same practices that we do through our waiver programs in the US. Which, if you haven't known it, okay, so a waiver program for an airshow pilot, no one can fly below 1,500 feet outside of an aerobatic box. If you're doing competitions, you can fly to the level of the practice waiver that you're in, but now you add an audience, and now you have to hold a low-level waiver that you've gone through our program to get, right? It's like the USPA is to skydivers what ICAS is to an airshow pilot. They're the gatekeepers of our waivers. So we start, if you do competitions, usually you can start at 500 feet. Otherwise, we start you at 1,200, 500, 250, then the surface. 2 years at the surface before you can do inverted ribbon cuts. And then there's a set criteria that you go through. And we have ACEs who do our evaluations, who have to have experience in the type of flying that we're doing. So we have a whole, when you go to an airshow and you get the magic happening in front of you, you can know that every one of those pilots has been through that program and maintains their currency through that program. We proudly have never killed an audience member at an air show in the United States. We separate from air race, though, so.
So your grandmother gave you your first taste of acro. What was the stepping stone then to do more and then to start doing competition?
Sure. So I intro through my grandma. I went and saw Oshkosh. That was huge for me. I went to Embry-Riddle in Prescott, Arizona. I'm full-time faculty for them. I taught in Daytona Beach and I still teach online. So I can't get away. But when I was at college, I went and found a guy who had a Citabria. I was really interested in bush flying. I'm like, I want to be a bush pilot. I want to go fly doctors in Africa or do something, which I got to do some of that too. But the guy I found took me out in his Citabria. We started doing some, learning some backcountry techniques, and then he did more aerobatics with me. I seemed to not be able to get away from the aerobatics. And I loved it. Actually, our first hammerhead, the fire extinguishers fell off and started going off, and then I just held it out the window while we're flying. He's like, you should keep doing this. And then I decided to go get some training in a pits with a guy, Major General Hank Canterbury. He was the first graduating class of the Air Force Academy, so Grandpa's Air Force made me proud. His son was on the Thunderbirds, and he had previously been on the Thunderbirds. So he took me to an air show to watch his son fly, and so that was pretty special. He did some flying training with me in the pits, and I saw a plaque on his wall for competitions. I thought, all right, I'm a bit competitive. If I can compete in aerobatics, I want to try this out. So I found a coach that I went and trained with. So we have coaches that will work with us, basically radio on the ground, working our way through the various levels. And then I had a Russian coach, Sergei Boryak, who plucked me up and said, I want to see what happens if I take you from that base level. It goes primary, sportsman, intermediate, advanced, unlimited. He grabbed me at sportsman and 2 years trained me to be on the US Unlimited Aerobatic team. So I skipped over doing the advanced team, went straight to the unlimited team, and I was 22 years old. So I was the youngest, I'm still the youngest person to ever be on the US Unlimited team. You go to Europe, it's normal. Here it's not. And then Sean Tucker, as I said, pulled me into his mentorship program. It was called the Stars of Tomorrow at the time, and got me my first air show waivers. Wayne Hanley, if you've heard of him, he used to fly the Turbo Raven. Wayne was my true ace mentor, and he took me all the way through to my surface level waiver. And you know, you start showing up and booking air shows, and they start giving you money to fly upside down. And at 20 years old, and you say, "Yeehaw!"
And what aircraft were you using as you progressed in
So,
your training?
in my training, I started in a Citabria. I jumped from the Citabria to the Pitts S2C. My parents are the best mom and dad in the world still. I'm the oldest of 5 kids, and they said, well, do you want to be an airline pilot or do you want to be an airshow pilot? If you want to be an airline pilot, we'll get you a twin and start building your time. Or if you want to be an airshow pilot, we'll get you a Pitts. And I'm like, I want to be an airshow pilot. So with the support of my family, I was able to get a Pitts, and that's how I was able to start flying and making money as an airshow performer, and also continuing with the competitions. Built up some great sponsorships that supported me through the years. And in 2005, I had my Edge 540 built. Of course, it was the era of the Red Bull Air Races, and Kirby Chambliss was a good friend, but also still my hero. And I saw what he was doing in the Edge, and I said, if I can ever fly the plane half as well as him, I'll be pretty proud of myself. So the Edge was the plane to go with back then. Yeah.
And was your Pitts a single-seater? So all you
two-seater, but I did get a single-place canopy conversion. It snaps a lot nicer. You only get about 5 more knots with it. They'll tell you get like 20. But mainly, because I was going to college at Embry-Riddle and had a 2-seat Pitts on the field, they knew if the 2-seat canopy was on, anyone could come for a ride. If the single-seat canopy was on, I was training.
How many hours have you accumulated altogether?
Oh, I've always thought we should count landings, not hours. I won't lie, I stopped logging back in like 2010, but on my Edge I have, I've probably got about close, I don't know, you worked on it last, maybe.
Got a picture of my phone.
Yeah, maybe somewhere, but probably up around 3,000 hours or so in the Edge. And then otherwise, with work and jobs, I'm probably sitting around 7,000 hours, I'd say. So yeah, I have earned every one of them.
I remember Patty Wagstaff making a comment that she basically rebuilds her aircraft at the end of every season.
Yeah.
Do you follow a similar program, or what's your maintenance?
I do. Typically when I just got the engine, it was meant to be an Iran. It turned into almost a full overhaul, which is okay. It needed a new case, and I overhaul my engine about at least every like 1,000 hours. I'd say I try to Iran it every 500 hours, and then going through the fabric whenever the fabric gets done, we go through and check all the tubes and everything. There's some parts that I will replace entirely. The push rods, the main bolts, and basically the stuff that we can't really inspect. So I don't know if it's just reaching its fatigue point. Every about 1,000 hours, I replace my full rudder cable assembly, which is all machined together because it's got adjustable rudders. So I'll replace those, the bolts, and the push rods. I try to do that every 1,000 hours, just because we can't tell if it's wearing. And with the type of flying we're doing, one thing breaks and you might be able to recover, but you're giving yourself a much better chance with doing pretty major overhauls. Sean actually, in his Pitts, they pressurize his tubes. So if it starts to lose pressure, he knows that he has a crack. Yeah. So yeah, we do pretty intensive. I break mine up over about 5 years, but I'd say over 5 years, the whole airplane gets gone through.
And what will you accumulate in a year, so to speak, and what can you expect out of the engine when it's worked so hard?
So I do between 200 and 300 hours a year on the Edge, and the engine, I put it back to 10-to-1 compression. I was sponsored by Eagle Engines in Redding, California. When they sponsored it, we bumped it up to 11-to-1. We were probably getting about 400 horsepower, but I absolutely did not go past 500 hours without sending it back to them at that high of compression. At 10.5, I could get 1,000 hours out of it comfortably. If you were just flying it around, you could take it much further, but with how much I'm power jockeying and shot cooling and flying low level, especially taking it over the water and into the places we go, the moment it starts to show any signs, I send it in. What cued me off this time, like we all know, you know how your engine just has its own personality, right? My engine definitely has its own personality, and I started to burn through oil a little quickly, and I kept having the bottom plug of my number 3, it kept getting oil fouled. And they're like, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. So about a year ago, I had them pull it off. I'm like, just overhaul it. I'm going to Central America. I can't be messing around with this. And that solved that problem, but it was still burning well within the limits, but more oil than I liked. So we sent the whole engine off last year. I said, I'm gonna lose half my season, but better that than, have the engine go when I'm doing an inverted ribbon cut again. And it needed a lot of work. Yeah.
So Melissa finished that engine overhaul and then had to fly from Florida to Bellingham.
Yeah.
How many stops do you have to make at braking,
Oh,
power setting?
It was actually kind of fun because I had to keep it at 75% horsepower, so I couldn't get very high. Darn Texas and their clouds, but I just pretty much followed the edge of the country all the way around. I had to stop every hour and a half for gas, so yeah, she was burning through it. So every hour and a half, about 18 hours. Simple math is hard, but that's about how many stops.
And that was a 2-day trip, right?
It was a 2-day trip. Yeah, a very, very busy 2-day trip. But I could drink all the coffee I wanted because I could stop to go pee every hour and a half. That was really nice.
As a crazy mother, 50 years of flying, and you have 20.
Yeah.
You've got 20 years ahead of you. As crazy as you are, you have told us how safe it can be,
Yeah.
and how fun it can be, and how better you are than some men I know that fly and kill themselves,
Yeah,
and which is a sad, sad thing.
yeah.
As a mother, I'd like to give you
Oh my
this,
goodness. Thank you.
and you'll understand every single one.
Betty,
There.
no, this is, you're going to have
Our
to,
children were flying before they were born.
you're going to have to sign this for me. And it's an interesting point, the whole guys versus girls thing. It does seem like, I don't know, sometimes maybe, I had, actually Paul asked me, flying up at TAT, I have no problem saying no to a flight. In fact, I pride myself in saying no. And I saw a bit of, you'll see, in the 135 world, you start seeing that okay, making money versus making a safety call, it gets to be a tricky balance. And one day I could just see, like, the weather was coming in, it was deteriorating, it was just not a great day to go fly up to a glacier with a bunch of passengers. And we'd had a streak of excellent weather. And it was not a VFR day. We have IFR capabilities, but all it does is let us get through the layer, and it makes it a lot trickier to get back in. And I'm not one to go land my otter on a road or get stuck on a glacier overnight. And I remember Paul rode his bike down. He's like, Melissa, I don't know why, with all your experience, you just seem so timid. And I've never had someone call me timid as a pilot before. And my response was, you hire me as a decision maker. And I feel that when I'm making my decisions, I'm protecting my certificate, but I'm also protecting your certificate. And I don't think bosses always appreciate that, but as a pilot, whenever someone hires us, they're hiring us to make those decisions. And even when the pressure's on, which as owners of these companies, I mean, it's tough. So sometimes they have to put the pressure on. But I think he understood and respected that response, maybe. But I personally pride myself in always being able to make that safety call. And I try to do that to set the example for those that have less experience, that are coming up and that feel that pressure, because they're going to follow the example of the people around them, And it's easy to go with the group. And we could sidebar on all kinds of stories about that, but yeah, I think for each of us, it's always important to remember that it's okay to say no. And one question I always ask myself: am I VFR? It's a really simple question, but it's one that has certainly kept me out of trouble. Not that I haven't gotten myself in trouble too, but it's kept me out of trouble more times than not. Thanks.
It's got to be fun.
It's got to be fun, and I want to get to do it again, and I want my kids to get to do it.
Are they going to Grandma's house?
Oh yeah, hopefully my grandkids will be coming to Grandma's house someday. I got a few years though.
Do you give aerobatic instruction when you're playing?
I don't, because I have a single seater.
Oh.
Yeah, and my neck would get pretty angry. I think if I have gone and done instruction with friends in like their decathlons and things like that. So once you get to the Pitts Edge extra level, at that point you're really just getting coaching, someone on the ground with a radio. It hurts the neck to ride in the back of one of those. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite air show maneuver you like?
Oh, my favorite air show maneuver. I'm a stunt person. I love stunts. So anytime I can organize a fun stunt, not really so much a particular maneuver. I love doing ribbon cuts because it gets the audience member, it gets everyone involved. I always have my pole holders take the ribbon and hand it out to the kids. They tie little bracelets, and then I just come and sign the ribbon. And they may not remember who I am, but they're going to remember that experience and that connection. I did a stunt a while back that I had my friend backflip over me on his motorcycle, and my friend Andy was walking highline. He does all the, he's a climber. I know him through the base jumping background, but awesome performer. He actually slacklined with Madonna at the Super Bowl. I think, and he was like, and then she came up and gave me a big old kiss. I'm like, good job. But so I had Andy highlining, I had Fitz backflipping, and I had the easy job. I just had to fly under them a bunch of times until they got the timing right. But
how long did it take to set up that stunt? Because I've seen that video.
Yeah, it took us once we had the equipment, because we were doing it it's near Hemet.
Yeah,
in SoCal. So we had to get some of those like elevator equipments that lift up to put the high line, make sure that we could keep it tensioned off enough, and really setting up the fire crews and the water, all the things that make it legal, the aerobatic box. That all took probably about 3 months before we, and then the actual stunt. Yes, Andy had his missing tooth, and it took about 3 months, and then it was 1 day at the airfield, a very nice 140 degrees on the tarmac. But the actual stunt, I'd say we flew for about 20 minutes to get the timing right where we wanted it. Yeah.
Did your husband also fly for TAT or Brand X?
He flew.
Oh, go ahead.
He flew when I met him. He was flying for Fly Denali, and then he had flown for TAT previously before that. A typical Alaska kid. He grew up flying at Bethel in Western Alaska and all that, flying Coke all over the place, but Coca-Cola. North border, not south. Sorry. And but yeah, he worked mostly for Fly Denali and TAT.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what was your time frame for doing that?
I was there 2016 until. Off and on because we had our kids until I took the job at Alaska Airlines, and November was my 1 year at Alaska. So, yeah. Oh yeah.
Where in Norway was that wingsuit flight?
Norway. So that was in. Where did we do Extreme Sports Week? Was in Voss, Norway. Yeah. And the scariest part of that trip, because the wingsuit jumps, they're big, beautiful cliffs. Oh, they're amazing. But like smart base jumpers, we like to climb up the easiest way, which is usually the rock falls. And instead of being, smart climbers, which you'd think we all are, instead of walking along the edge, we just go walking right up the middle. Man, we were walking up, and I heard that crack of the serac, which seems miles away. The speed at which that serac came down and car-sized boulders were rolling past us, it happened in a moment. We bolted to the side and then stuck to the wall for the rest of our hike. But I love Norway. So beautiful.
Been there many times.
You get Jewel to start flying an airplane. Tell us about flying a wingsuit.
So wingsuiting with base jumping, like all sports, you build your way up to it. So you start out skydiving, you work through your ratings, you build up your canopy skills, and I'd say that the canopy skills is the most important part with the wingsuits. We usually like people to have 200 skydives before they start wingsuiting, and you start with little wingsuits. I got to be a part of the wingsuit base jumping as it was really becoming a sport. So, it's got a long history, but it really got popularized over the last 20 years. but we only had little suits. As we started to get these bigger wingsuits, we were having bad line twists, right? Like we'd be pitching, but just like an airplane, you've got dirty air behind you, so we're pitching. Our pilot chutes are coming out, going crazy in this dirty air, pulling our canopies out just in these nasty tangled messes. And we didn't want to take those large wingsuits into the base jumping environment until we knew we could have clean openings, because you've only got one parachute. So we started, it was actually my friend Johnny, he started figuring out, he's from Colombia, he was Red Bull sponsored, but he figured out that you could actually flare the wingsuit. We never thought you could get enough lift to actually climb, but we had GPS trackers on us, and he was actually able to get his wingsuit to climb and pitch out. We got longer bridles so that it was a longer string before the small pilot chute pulls out the main chute. So by flaring, getting that clean air, and having that long bridle, it was allowing us to get nice clean air openings, because opening on heading is the most important part. I could show you other videos and stories sometime of when that doesn't happen. I ended up hanging off a cliff, broke tib-fib spiral fracture in my leg, and it was a month after I had a cliff strike and fractured my L2. So, and this was at like the height of my currency. So it was, canopy openings is by far probably the most dangerous and critical part of base jumping, especially wingsuit base. We started wingsuit base jumping to get away from the cliffs so that we wouldn't hit them. Then all my friends decided it would be fun to fly along the cliffs and down the couloirs, and I mean, as it goes. But just like with aerobatics, you don't start out flying at the surface. With the wingsuiting and with the base jumping, anytime you see a video of somebody flying this epic line that you should probably be skiing, not flying a wingsuit down, they've scouted it, they've probably hiked it, let's say they're flying and they could have this much clearance from terrain, but they're working their way down to the point that they're flying with the terrain. So it's a very steep, dirty flight, but they have the lift and they have the angle to be able to almost like climb away, but really just increase that glide and get separation from the terrain, if that makes sense. Yeah, I know, different sport. Yeah.
I thought I caught the term wingsuit, or maybe not wingsuit, but racing.
Yes.
And it just seemed to me that means just a smaller suit and just an incredible rate of descent.
Yeah, so it depends on the glide ratio. So most of us would show up to a wingsuit race with a heavier rig and smaller suits that are like steeper, faster lines, and also to try to find one that had maximum forward speed for the best glide and really, really light. So it really depended on the course that they had. Norway was a steep, fast course, so that one was fun. It's just jump off side by side, steep, fast. For safety, you have to have a minimum canopy flight, so you can't dive too low or else you get cut off for safety. But they had a laser that would measure who crossed the line first, and it was an elimination round. And China was similar, except it was a longer flight. We had turns and pylons we had to go around, and a cable car that we had to go under, so it was a little bit more of a technical flight. But we had to open and land on a road there that was a bridge. That was probably the gnarliest part of that one. So yeah, it totally depends on the race course. Yeah.
And are they all then done side by side, elimination rather than time? Or?
Some do timed, one at a time. In Europe, I'd say it's more common to have the side by side. It's just kind of fun having the two platforms and going for it. But they do have them sometimes where it's just one at a time and timing it. The side by side works great because it takes out the weather factor, because just like flying, every time you go, the winds, the conditions might change a little bit. So by doing it as an elimination, sort of like think of a stacked board, then if the conditions change from jump to jump, then it's not going to really impact the results.
But then if you're doing side by side, are you flying duplicate courses, or are you fighting to get in the lead?
Good question.
And does that create dirty air for the person behind you?
So with the side by side, it's always a straight out race, and they have a center lane that you can't cross for safety. If you do cross the center lane, you get eliminated. China is a one at a time because of the style course it was. So that one was all timing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how do they create this line over this topography, for Pete's sake?
Lasers. No. it's visually, they're just watching us. They're keeping an eye on it. They just give us points. Think about, it's like whenever you're flying, right? You get a point out ahead of you. So they give us points out ahead of us, and they separate them, and basically that's your aim point. Because you're usually down tucked, kind of watching behind you, but that forces you to keep watching, and usually you'll pick a few physical points along the flight as well that you can spot below you, because otherwise you'll tend to drift. So mainly just aiming for a point out ahead of you. Yeah.
Any crew jumps?
Not for me. No, I'm scared of other canopies close to me. Cool. Well, thanks for oh yeah, go ahead.
One last question, well, two last questions. What are you doing on July 27th? That's the open house day.
Oh, fun! July 27th. I'll look it up and sidebar with you. I might be at Oshkosh.
I get it. Other question is, so you have all the adventure flying, you sound pretty tough, and you're pretty, gutsy. What
thank you.
One thing would you look at? What would you say, he's not doing that, that's crazy?
Oof. Crew? Yeah.
Sharks.
My dad was a deep sea diver, so I grew up dredging for gold. Like that's how you keep 5 kids busy. You stick them underwater and tell them dig a big hole. So I've had a really fun adventurous upbringing. I think I blame my parents for most of it, but yeah, I don't know. I think I don't ride motorcycles.
You mentioned your grandparents flying, you didn't mention your parents.
Nope, skipped a generation. My parents don't fly. It was my mom's mom. She's one of 6 girls. 2 of them started flying, but they never finished their rating. I've got 20-some cousins on that side. Since a couple of them have gotten their license since, but I'm the only one that took them up on learning to fly. All I had to do was pay for gas and go stay at Grandma and Grandpa's for a month. So I guess I got all the aviation blood.
And where did Grandma and Grandpa live? In other words, where did you do your training?
Butler, Pennsylvania, north of Pittsburgh.
Yes.
Yep, BTP. Cool. Well, thank you for having me. It's nice to meet you all.